Welcome to our new podcast called Mother, Me, Keisha. Yes, Keisha from The Truth Show and Keisha's Gossips and Truths.
And a daughter, me, Alexis, from who's currently in college right now. So.
Al Azaya Chat, which means...
AKA Random Chat.
I know our last podcast, we talked about Harriet Tubman, Kanye West, and we gave you a sneak preview of this podcast of talks about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr.
Well, today, we're going to get deep into the death of Martin Luther King Jr. and all of the conspiracy theories surrounding his death, because there are many.
Oh, and they tried to kill him more than once, too. Oh, yes.
Yes, they did.
The story is that on April 4th, 1968 was the day Dr. King was delivering his I've Been to the Mountaintop speech. And later, while standing on the balcony of Lorraine Motel outside room 306, where Dr. King was assassinated. But as we said before, that wasn't the first attempt. It was told that on September 20th, 1958, a woman who was hired to perform this tragic deed, who, by the way, wasn't from the line waiting to have her book signed, oh no, had a .25 caliber automatic pistol hidden in her dress. Oh yes. Listen to this, and then we'll talk more later.
You know, several years ago, I was in New York City. It was a dark Saturday afternoon. The minute black woman came up, the only question I heard from her was, "You, Martin Luther King?" And I said, "Yes." The next minute, I felt something beating on my chest. Before I knew it, I had been stabbed by this demented woman. That blade had gone through, and the x-rays revealed the tip of the blade was on the edge of my aorta, the main artery. And once that's punctured, you're drowned in your own blood. That's the end of it. It came out in the New York Times the next morning that if I had merely sneezed, I would have died. After my chest had been opened and the blade had been taken out, from all over the states and the world, kind letters came in. One of them I will never forget. I had received one from the president and the vice president. I've forgotten what those telegrams said. I received a visit and a letter from the governor of New York, but I've forgotten what that letter said. But there was another letter that came from a little girl. It said simply, "Dear Dr. King, while it should not matter, I would like to mention that I'm a white girl. I'm simply writing you to say that I'm so happy that you didn't sneeze." And I want to say tonight that I too am happy that I didn't sneeze, because if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1960 when students all over the South started sitting in at lunch counters. And I knew that as they were sitting in, they were really standing up for the best in the American dream, taking the whole nation back to those great wells of democracy, which were dug deep by the founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1961 when we decided to take a ride for freedom and ended segregation in interstate travel. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1962. when Negroes in Albany, Georgia decided to straighten their backs up. And whenever men and women straighten their backs up, they are going somewhere, because a man can't ride your back unless it is bent. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been here in 1963. Black people of Birmingham, Alabama aroused the conscience of this nation, brought into being the Civil Rights Bill. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have had a chance later that year in August to try to tell America about a dream that I had had. If I had sneezed, I I wouldn't have been down in Selma, Alabama to see the great movement there if I had sneezed. I wouldn't have been in Memphis to see a community rally around those brothers and sisters who are suffering. I'm so happy that I didn't sneeze. Like anybody, I would like to live. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will.
Yeah, this assassination attempt was the start of many brave things to come thereafter. It ignited a fight within people, kind of like the death of George Floyd.
Yeah, but we stopped. We stopped because of this endless pandemic. Don't let me get started on this pandemic moving forward here. Then later on, April 4th, 1968, he was killed. But it wasn't so much of the tragic death. It was the theories behind his death. It was reported that James Earl Ray was the man behind Dr. King's death. But here's the crazy part. Mr. Ray mostly had a history of armed robbery. Heck, he was sent to federal penitentiary in Leavenworth, Kansas for 45 months. He was later paroled in 1959, and later Mr. Ray was sent again to prison for robbery. But on April 23, 1967, Ray escaped from prison, oh yes, in a bakery delivery truck, okay? This is where Mr. Ray claimed that he became a gun runner for some blonde Cuban guy named Raul. Mr. Ray stated that Raul directed him to purchase the rifle. Listen to what I'm saying, people. This Mr. Ray said that Raul directed him to purchase the rifle that was later allegedly used in the assassination attempt of Dr. King. Oh, I'm not done yet. There is an actual footage of the interview of James Earl Ray saying he didn't do it. Listen to this.
So you heard the news on the radio? Is that the way you heard it? So you were driving. You left that gas station at 2nd and Linden. What, about 6 or?
I don't have any way of knowing. I think it's around that time, but I don't even know if it's Linden. I know what the approximate area it is. And I've seen the map on the Enquirer.
And you were going back to pick up this man that you say is Raul?
No, I just waiting the car back.
So you heard all this confusion. Turned and flipped on the radio. They said Dr. King's been shot. Did you think you were set up at that point?
No, I was headed toward New Orleans when I had the radio on. I used to keep the radio on. I think I didn't have too strong feelings about the shooting.
When you met Raul, you didn't know any other name for him. That's the name that he said was his, and that's all you ever knew.
Yeah, I did just know.
And you met him where?
Canada.
Up in Canada. Yeah. And you just met in a saloon, or?
It was a saloon in a waterfront area of Montreal.
You never became good friends then?
No, I wasn't good friend. Just business. These were all aliases, I assume.
You don't think Raul was a real name at all then? Huh?
No, I've got some Freedom of Information papers in there saying there's a Raul Santiago or something in New Orleans. It's supposed to be a him, but I don't have the FBI. That's material from the FBI files, but I don't have nothing to substantiate that.
So you think their mind was made up when they got you?
Well, it had to be made up. They couldn't. Well, I don't know if there's any penalty for extraditing someone fraudulently or not, but I think I can see their legal point where they've got to stick with their story.
Oh, I'm not done yet. The ballistics also reported that the FBI's original test on the bullet that killed Dr. King wasn't inconclusive. And in 1997, tests were ran comparing 12 test bullets from the alleged murder rifle and the bullet that killed Dr. Martin Luther King. Ballistics expert Robert Hathaway testified that the killing bullet lacked reference points found on the actual fire test bullets. It seems that the unique barrel markings could not be found on the killing bullet, which means I'm starting to think that whoever this Raul is, they were already we already know this is premeditated. Okay,
yeah.
So I think they had him purchase that so they can frame him later, for the assassination tip. I think the whole thing, well, we know the whole thing is a huge setup, but I think it begun with this Raul asking Mr. Ray to get this gun and become a gun runner so they can later accuse him of killing Dr. King. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that, but it was also leaked that and well known that Dr. King was being constantly harassed by the FBI, especially by the director of the FBI, Edgar Hoover. They tapped into his phone and so on. But it seems that all of this came about after the Montgomery bus boycott in 1956.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it did seem to transpire a little out of control around that time. You see, they tried to paint Dr. King as a communist and a cheater, etc., as they did and are doing with Bill Cosby and others. This is what was said to discredit Dr. King's character. And this is what was said by that Mr. J. Edgar Hoover, okay? A tomcat with obsessive, degenerate sexual urges. Oh, yes, that's what he said. Oh, and their report spilled so much more. Listen to this, y'all. One Negro minister in attendance later expressed his disgust with the behind-the-scenes drinking, fornication, and homosexuality. The document also alleged several Negro and white prostitutes were brought in from the Miami area. And all-night sex orgies was held with these prostitutes and some of the other delegates. And on one occasion, the FBI mailed alleged sex tape of King's adultery and letter to Coretta Scott King in an attempt to destroy their marriage. But Coretta later remarked that, and I quote, "I couldn't make much out of it. It was just a lot of mumbo-jumbo." Mm-hmm. The letter accused Dr. King of being sexually psychotic and a colossal fraud. The letter warned King that your end is approaching, and he was done. Oh, yes. If that didn't sound like a threat, I don't know what did. I mean, I'm just saying.
This is so insane.
It is insane. Now here's the thing. This is what really tricky, and things just start going off in my head, Now, you all have to understand that Dr. King, Jesse Jackson, and many more were very close to the late Aretha Franklin's father, Reverend Clarence LaVon Franklin, who was well known as the Orgy King. Many people testified to this, okay? Many people testified to this. Even celebrities testified to Aretha Franklin's father, Reverend Clarence LaVon Franklin, for being the Orgy King. I'm not going to get deep into all that, but just stating facts here, because I've already done a video about the late Aretha Franklin, and I go very deep with all that stuff. I'll try to leave the link below. Anyway, so could it be that Dr. King could have been a cheater, a liar? I know he smoked cigarettes and all of that, but still cared about civil rights. I mean, he was only 39 years old. Yeah, I do know he was only 39 years old when he died. He was very young.
Yeah, that is young.
Yeah, very, very young. See, he wasn't just old, 50, 60. I don't think that's old, but I'm just saying he wasn't of that very, very mature age. He was just 39 years old, and he had just turned 39, in January? So he's pretty young, you know what I mean?
Hold up. Wasn't it also leaked that Dr. King didn't really die from a bullet? It grazed the side of his face and head, hence his open casket. And it was later known that King was killed in a hospital. You have a clip on it, right, Mom?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, he was. Really? Okay, let's take a listen to this.
Tonight, our nation celebrates one of its most inspirational leaders and activists by honoring the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. We know all that he came and dealt with racial fairness and lost his life in that fight. But did you know that there are investigations that have gone on about how actually he died? See, most of us think that we know exactly how he died, how he was shot, and it was an open and shut case. Well, guess what? This is an amazing tale that you're about to hear from Michelle Greenstein about what has been uncovered regarding his death. I'm gonna hand it to you and let you take it away, because in my conversations with you thus far, I have been drop-jawed listening to you. And
so was I. I actually spoke earlier today to Dr. William Pepper. He actually, on behalf of Coretta Scott King and the King family, filed a civil suit in the case of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, this is the only trial that's ever been held about this assassination because, as we know, James Earl Ray, after he pled guilty, meant there was no trial. So this is the only trial that's ever been held. Now, we're all familiar with the official story of this lone gunman, right, in 67.
James Earl Ray shot him.
He was in jail for armed robbery. He somehow escaped.
Admitted to it.
Right. But what's interesting is that he pled guilty, but he didn't confess. And actually, in these court transcripts, he says over and over, I did not confess to killing King. And he says he only did so because he feared for his life. He and William Pepper told me that the only reason James pled guilty is because it was the only way to save his life. Now, he did this as a last resort, and he was actually told by his lawyer, Percy Foreman, that he should take the guilty plea because that's how he was going to get a new lawyer. So he saw this as his only way to get rid of this bad lawyer and get a new lawyer. And interestingly enough, he filed for an appeal days afterward and tried to get a new trial. So like I said, I spoke to Dr. Pepper earlier today. Here's what he had to say about the way Dr. Martin Luther King was actually killed.
Wow.
He wasn't killed from the bullet that hit him on the balcony. He was taken to the St. Joseph's Hospital, and he was killed in the emergency room of St. Joseph's Hospital by the chief of neurosurgery, Dr. Breen Bland, who came in when they were all working on him in the emergency room, and he said, get out of here, let that die. And as they moved out of the room, the last one out was a surgical nurse, Lula Mae Shelby, and when she heard them gathering up spit in their lungs to spit on Martin's body lying on a bed there. Then she saw Dr. Bland take the catheters out of Martin's body and take the pillow from under his head and put it over his face and suffocate him. And that's how Martin King died. That's how he was really assassinated. Now, he might have died anyway from the bullet wounds, but he didn't. He was still alive and still breathing. The chief neurosurgeon, he intervened and he made sure that death would result.
Wow.
Right? My jaw was on the floor. Now, Dr. Pepper knows this because the son of the nurse, Lula Mae Shelby, who died, but before she died told her family, the son of this nurse told Dr. Pepper under oath. And when Dr. Pepper confronted a member of the Dixie Mafia, he said, yes, this happened, and actually that the chief of surgery was their family doctor, and that 3 weeks before the assassination, he visited them and said, hey, if the bullet doesn't kill him, make sure he goes to St. Joseph's because we will make sure that he dies. Now, let's talk about this case, okay? This was the civil suit in 1999 where Pepper represented the King family, and that really made the family feel like they had closure, and like I said, it was the only trial ever held. The Memphis jury in this case decided that local, state, and federal governments were liable for King's death, and that this was a real conspiracy, a conspiracy between the U.S. military, the Memphis PD, and Dixie Mafia, these crime figures in Memphis, Tennessee.
This is just for the audience.
Right.
This is a civil case that was brought, much like the O.J. case.
Right, where
where
a jury
they couldn't find him guilty here, but finally when a civil jury heard it, they came out with a
It was the only trial, yes, and there was 30 days of trial, and over 70 witnesses were heard. And Dr. Pepper told me earlier today that it took the jury less than an hour to decide after these 30 days
that this was a true conspiracy.
Correct.
Where others may have been involved.
Correct.
Other than the person who was accused.
And that James Earl Ray was the fall man and that he was unwittingly, unknowingly part of this conspiracy. And the real shooter, I gotta say this even though we can't get to the whole story, was Frank Strouser. He was a Memphis police officer, the best shot in the Memphis PD, and he was the one who actually fired the fatal shot.
So let me just understand this correctly. The bullet just grazed inside of his face. So just maybe his ear probably got blown off, or maybe just a little chunk inside of his face or head, whatever. But he really didn't die. That would explain the picture that we saw after he died, because he didn't look like he was dead. It looked like he was just in really bad pain. And if anyone who got shot in the head, how would they have an open casket and you don't see a bullet in the middle of their forehead or whatever?
Yeah, but I could just imagine, like, the people who hired the gunman to kill them, just their disappointment when they realized he missed.
I have no idea. No one really actually know who really pulled that trigger. What we do know is that this Mr. Ray got into it because he was a petty thief. I mean, his whole criminal record was just stealing stuff. I mean, that's why he was a gun runner. He probably stole those guns. You know, he was just a petty freaking thief. That's all he was. He wasn't a killer. So whoever tried to kill him at that distance didn't do very good. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, The fact that they actually had to smother him. So that's really sad, though.
That is really sad that, they wanted him dead that bad. And all these rumors to discredit him, his cheating and things of that nature. I don't know if he cheated or not. I mean, I honestly would be perfectly honest with you. He could have cheated, but it still does not discount all the good he has done for the Black community, the changes he progressed, and there goes Malcolm X as well. So I don't care what went on in his private life. That's between he and his late wife, that they're living in bliss. I'm hoping right now, because they're both passed on. May they rest in peace. And it's for something them to deal with in their afterlife. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's really, really sad. It's really, 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 really sad that they wanted him dead that bad. They have to go to extreme measures in doing it. And you know what? And I have to say this, times has not changed.
It really hasn't.
I mean, look, we have Bill Cosby in jail. I think he's 70-something, maybe 80-something. Man has done so much. I have his TV series on DVD. I watch it all the time. My heart aches, all the good he has done for colleges and things of that nature. People think he did just for colleges for some sick, twisted thing. He did it because he was around a time where it was not an option to go to school. You have to fight to get an education, which is why he forced many people of color to go to college. It wasn't because he wanted to get with the cheerleaders or the whoever. No, because education was very important to him. And it's sad that people want to make this man seem like first of all, he was rich. This kind of compares. He was rich and he was Black and he held a lot of power. I don't think he has to drug anybody.
But that seems to be a trend here when it comes to a lot of Black leaders. If they're rich and power,
and
or they have, Black, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But when they're like Black and in power like that, it seems like a lot of them get very scared and try to, not try to.
They did with Michael Jackson too.
Yeah.
They did with Michael Jackson too. Call him a freaking sandwich. Michael Jackson. You have Michael Jackson. I think they're trying to do that with Prince. And we have Bill Cosby. We have Dr. King. I think, guess what? I actually heard a rumor that Malcolm X was gay.
They are really trying it.
I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Okay, now you guys just getting freaking ridiculous. We're not even getting to all the rumors and crap that you guys have literally hidden about your alleged leaders. Elvis, the pedophile? Sorry, I just don't get me started here, but
Okay,
let me just say this. Get back to the point. But in the end, the U.S. government in 1999 was found guilty in a court of law of conspiring to kill Dr. King, but this was silenced by the media along with many other things.
Well, I guess that could be in this debate, like everything when it pertains to iconic Black leaders.
Oh, yes, and we're definitely going to get into more of that later. Next, we're going to talk about Malcolm X. Oh, yes, stay tuned. Well, that's it for today's podcast. Tune in for Tuesday's podcast.
Oh, yes. We are here every Tuesday and Thursday. Yeah, and we have a lot more coming. No filter, especially you, Mom.
Anyway, talk to you all later.
Well, bye-bye.